Let's talk about a different type of stories that communities have. And you call this sharing values stories. Give me an example of what you mean by that.
So, uh, if I'm visiting a community or I'm part of it and want to choose how much I'm going to invest, someone can tell me what the values are, but that doesn't usually mean very much. And there might be values listed on a website somewhere, and I don't think anybody cares. It's the stories of how that community actually manifests those values that are going to matter to me. And one of the stories that really resonates with me is for years, my wife and I have been CrossFitters. A story that still resonates with me is I remember watching a video of a regional competition. On the video, there's a woman competing who was clearly not in really good shape, and she had a lot of extra weight. And she was by far the last person on the course completing the CrossFit competition. And I remember in the video, the crowd at the competition had not just cheered for the winners and then gone about their way and let the last competitors finish. They'd actually gather around this last competitor and cheered loudly when she finished. And we had a saying in CrossFit in the early days about the values, and that was the biggest cheers were for the last athlete. And the reason was we were honoring the effort, not the performance, because everybody only has the performance they have on any given day. But we can recognize that they're putting in great or their best effort. And we know that it's harder for someone who doesn't yet have the fitness to complete an event while they're on the course longer than the fit athletes that do it quickly. And so someone who's not in shape and takes a longer time can get just as big cheers as the person who does it quickly. Or said differently, we shared that we valued the effort and the commitment more than the performance. And that still resonates with me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm still part of and excited to be part of my CrossFit community, because that's what we honor.
So, if I'm hearing you right, these values stories serve the same purpose as a mission statement, but are a more effective way to show that in action and to really express that in a way that people can understand it and internalize it.
But they're connected. I think of a mission statement as being an effort to clarify an aspirational set of values. And my understanding of mission statements is the mission statements aren't that important. It's the process to craft mission statement that's important, because it forces a conversation. What is our mission statement? But you can put anything you want on a wall. It doesn't take very long. It's not very hard. What's harder is actually living a life consistent with the values that we state we want to live by. And the stories of our experience in a community is actually what reveals, are those values present? Do they matter?
So let's talk about another type of story that you mentioned in the book, and that is stories where people share vulnerabilities. Give me an example of this, and why is this important?
Yeah, if we don't see vulnerable stories shared in a community, then it gives us the suspicion that the presentation of how great the community is and the members and the leaders, that it is either blind to its flaws and failures, or it's all pretense. Because we know that in the real world, people have flaws and there are failures. When I was doing the research for the book, I had a long conversation with Marcus Graham, who at the time was executive with Twitch. And Twitch at the time was a gathering place for roughly 250,000 people, largely around videos about video gaming. And he shared with me that in the development of Twitch, where they really worked to be a platform that brought people together around their shared enthusiasm for video games, there was a time where they made an upgrade to their platform where they lost thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of a very important part of their platform around Pokemon. As you can imagine, enraged untold tens of thousands of members that this video was just gone. And Marcus wanted to know not only how they could go find that video and get it reposted again, but also how they could maintain and repair the broken trust with their members. And he shared with me how he immediately went to the leaders of this Pokemon group on Twitch and said, we messed up. We did something that broke this platform, and it is in fact broken. And I don't know what it's going to take to get it back. I don't know how long it will take to get it back, but I can tell you that we are committing this number of engineers to get it back. And eventually, after some weeks, they were able to get the video back and repair the platform. But he shared with me, because right away he had been honest that they had messed up and they needed to fix it as an organization. It maintained the trust with the members, even though there was this big breakdown in the platform. Whereas if he had just said in so many words, look, we're talented technical people, we have engineers, sometimes things go wrong, but there's nothing to see here, just trust us, he thinks he would have engendered a lot of resentment and mistrust. So he recognized sharing a vulnerable story where they messed up was really important in maintaining the strong relationships they had with the people who entrusted them with their time.
Yeah, I can see how that would build trust. I can also see how, we had a conversation, for example, about temples, essentially spaces where communities gather, that being in a space like that makes it easier, or at least makes you feel safer when you're telling these vulnerable stories, when you know the other people who are in there. And we've also talked about having the sort of the right people in there, and being able to tell those vulnerable stories in places like that. So I see how that becomes important. Another type of story that you talk about is personal stories. What do you mean by this?
We need to give participants a time and a venue to share how participating in that community, whatever it is, affects them. If we don't do that, then all that's coming out are the official stories from the leadership, and it makes us suspect as members what's really happening to people who are participating. And this is probably going to happen when people gather around shared meals and whatnot. But I've learned that for many organizations, they take it for granted that this happens, and they may not provide time for those stories to be shared. If I'm thinking about whether I want to participate in your podcasting community, for example, or if I want to commit more, it's going to make a profound difference to me to hear from other members, look, spending time in Seth's podcast group has really enriched my life. It's really moved the needle in me growing into who I want to be. So if you, Seth, are going to ask me to participate more, it's going to be critically important that I get access to people who can share personally, how did Seth's podcasting group make a difference for me, and how and why they're looking for more so they can grow into who they want to be.
So as you're talking about this, the majority of my career has been spent in media, with content creators. And so I find myself in a situation where I'm often distinguishing between an audience and a community. And in an audience, the stories are one-way communications, top down. And what you're saying here, and in the community, you're creating a space and allowing people to come together and connect. And that's where these stories start to come, not just, like you said, from the leadership, but from the members themselves, as they're participating in the community, or potentially bringing in new members and letting them know what happens in the community. So providing space for that to happen, it sounds like.
Yeah. What's come up for me, as you mentioned that, Seth, is I've been invited to many educational institutions, and in virtually every one of them, someone says something to the effect of, we want parents more involved. And I understand it. God bless them. You can invite parents to events. You can tell parents what you want them to volunteer for, and what gifts you want them to give. If you want to get parents more involved, one of the things that will make a difference, of the many things we talked about, is parents hearing from other parents how getting involved with that school has helped them be who they want to be, which is hopefully better parents or better members of the community. They're more generous, more committed, and making it more safe. So parents hearing the stories of other parents on how being involved made a difference will make a difference on whether other parents want to get more involved and invest more. It sounds simple, but you can imagine if all the messages are just from the head of the school sending out messages and making announcements of what volunteer slots are open, that's not going to be nearly as powerful as the parents hear